Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We've got a really notable guest on today. She's an award-winning designer, an educator, and a partner at Pentagram. Born in Taipei, Taiwan, she joined Pentagram's New York office in 2012. She's a six-time National Design Award nominee. Please join me in welcoming and celebrating Natasha Jen. Welcome.
Hi, great to meet you. Thanks, Thomas.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Yes,
Great. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
I'm a graphic designer by training, and I work on all types of design problems, from branding to editorial design to typography design to motion. And nowadays, AI generated work. So it's really broad, but ultimately, it's all about visual communication. Communication underscores everything that we do.
Great. And just enough for the audience, if you guys are interested in the big 2025 episodes, check out the episode with Kareem Rashid. Question two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Key piece of knowledge that makes me different. Okay, I think what makes me different is not so much about the knowledge that I have, but rather it's about my attitude towards things that I don't know. I'm a very curious person, and I would spend a lot of time trying to figure things out. We encounter a lot of different subject matters from different industries all the time. Each project always feels like it's something entirely new, and I would spend a lot of time learning about things and trying to really understand what is the heart of the matter that we need to address. So yeah, I would say curiosity is the more sort of defining characteristic in me.
Great. And three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Good question. Well, I stumble upon graphic design by accident. I came to New York in 1998, and I was first enrolled in a fine arts department at the School of Visual Arts because I wanted to become a painter. But after the first year, my mom really questioned my choice of study. Okay, and she was very concerned about future jobs, and I thought, well, to make my education a little bit more rewarding in terms of future profession, I should probably switch my major. So I looked around, I was still at the School of Visual Arts. I liked the foundational training that I had there, very basic like paintings and drawings courses, which I enjoyed a lot. I looked around and I thought that graphic design, which I had very little knowledge about, seemed interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a profession and it's a practice that involves using computers. Okay, and I didn't know any computer design software at that time, so I thought that that would be a kind of hard knowledge that would be good to have. And secondly, I was just very interested by the stuff, by the work, students' work coming out from the graphic design department. Students, a lot of posters, and that was a time when posters were still, a main medium, as well as, album covers, packaging, things that were really expressive and visual. So I chose graphic design. I switched major in my second year. And again, without knowing any software, at that time, you need to know at least two software programs, Photoshop and Illustrator, and I didn't know anything. But I took the class that's called visual literacy, which was actually a required class for all sophomore students in the department. And that was taught by the department chair, Richard Wild. And that was really the course that opened up my eyes just about the power of visual communication. So I was immediately, attracted to graphic design, and I worked really hard during my school years, and I did pretty well in school. So, it was just this sort of very positive, self-reinforcing thing that started to happen right throughout my school years, and I also got really good really educational internships during the time. I also got scholarships, so it was just a lot of positive reinforcement. And then very naturally I just entered the profession of graphic design, and here I am at Pentagram.
Mm, perfect. Number four, some people struggle with. The question is, what does your future look like?
What does future look like, or what does my future look like?
Your future.
My future.
Mhm.
Oh, very big question. Um, my future, I think, is very much intertwined with the future of this profession, this practice called, graphic design. Okay. Well, first of all, you don't hear people use this term graphic design a lot, particularly once you go outside of the school environment. You don't really hear this term because graphic design now it is so professionalized into many different subgenres. For example, you hear about identity design, visual identity, but I think fewer and fewer people are calling it identity design because we're now using this word branding as an umbrella term. Okay, branding is a lot broader than just visual identity design. So, the graphic design has branding, which is a very large professional force. You will have, say, like, digital UX UI design. You would then have, art direction, again, which is also becoming, its own subgenre. So the profession itself is evolving very rapidly, especially under the different technology shifts as well. So, just in terms of the tools that we use, um, the tools capabilities as well as the different types of tools have also transformed a lot just in the last few years, and now we also see that AI, which is still really, really new, and is able to actually, enter the sort of image creation, area as well as, moving image creation, but it hasn't actually been able to handle things such as graphic typography or logo design in any meaningful ways. But I think that we can anticipate that AI's ability will just get better and better and get better very fast, given that it is such a concentrated business area right now. And we know that large language model, companies, they're all racing, right, in this battle. So we can anticipate that AI's ability is going to improve pretty rapidly. But what we don't know is how all the technology, changes are going to intersect with what we do precisely because we just don't know, right? And, new capabilities just emerge also so rapidly. You will see an announcement of a new particular capability, right? On social media, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know is that millions of people are trying that, are using it. So, my future is very much intertwined with the excitement as well as the uncertainty brought forth by technology evolution. And I think that we're probably more in a kind of revolution kind of mode right now because the rapid changes brought forth by AI don't feel evolutionary as some of the other previous technological changes such as the arrival of the internet, right? the arrival of cloud-based, information sharing and storage. This feels quite different. So yeah, I know that is a really long-winded answer, but I think my future is very much tied to the excitement and uncertainty in technology.
Perfect. Five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
100%. It's a great question. And because I think that with technology, with video calls, right? The boundaries that we previous had with geolocations basically don't exist anymore, right? We can work, across the globe, across very different time zones, and you see how that is changing workforce, for example, how that is also changing people's attitude about work. And for me, I live in New York City, and I came here in 1998. So, more than half of my life now has spent in New York City. I call this place my home. I never planned, to actually to be here for this long, right? And New York City, I think plays a really, really big part in not only my professional life, but in my personal life here as well. I'm surrounded by some of the most brilliant people from different industries. And, I think New York is a city that is very much fueled by ambition. Okay, ambition in all different, ways across all different types of industries and talents. And you're surrounded by some of the most brilliant people, be in my own industry or from outside of my industry. And that always feel very exciting and I think humbling as well, because you always meet somebody who makes you go, oh wow, I want to talk to you more. I want to learn from you, I want to hang out with you again, right? And that I think is very New York. And also, I think this city brings a very sort of natural sense of pressure, not in a bad way, but I think pressure is very much felt in New York City. The pace here is super fast, and people want to cut to the chase, and that changes the rhythm of your personal life to a big degree, at least in my case. I work a lot, and I don't have this sort of the sort of traditional division of work life, balance, because I enjoy my work, and I'm thinking about the challenges brought forth by work. I think about my projects a lot, even when I'm at home. But I actually enjoy that because, that's what makes me really happy, right? So, I think New York has this sort of very has a kind of intensity to it that is very much tied to what we do and what we make here. So you're always in the doing mode, and you're always in the making mode. So, when it comes to life, right, I do take breaks, I'm not working 24 hours. I do spend time with my families, with my dogs, with my friends, for example. But, the intensity and the vibrancy that comes from doing and making definitely has a very big profound impact on my life as well. So that is, to location, New York City.
Perfect. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Yeah, well, uh, I th I think one big lesson that I have learned over the years, and it wasn't just like one lesson learned, through one incident, at a particular moment. It's actually this sort of accumulative experiences that became a learning is that don't try to don't try to be so hard on yourself. That is the path ahead of you will always get better. meaning that when you are at a moment of failure, and failure can come in, in all shapes and forms, right? Can be really, really painful experiences. Don't try to dwell on it. See what you can learn from it, bring the positiveness out of that, and then move on and move on quickly. Don't dwell on it. So always think that there is a path ahead, and this path will only get better. It took me actually a long time to come to this conclusion. And, as a young person, and especially as a young person who works really hard, who has a lot of expectations, high expectations for yourself. And I'm sure a lot of you out there, are like that. Um, I always tend to get into this sort of, rabbit hole of self-blaming, when I failed, right? But I got to learn that a lot of times, these failures are not necessarily what you did wrong, but rather much bigger context. They're completely out of your control. So you gotta actually learn from it and move on. And life is about moving on, okay? Don't try to dwell on failures.
Nice. And seven, what's a day in your life like?
Um, I I get up in the morning, not too early. I'm not one of those, super early birds, like waking up at 5 or even 6. I get out of the bed around 7 a.m. and I will have my morning coffee. I like to take a walk around the block in my neighborhood. I live in downtown Brooklyn, it's a residential area with a lot of buildings, not necessarily a kind of very green space, but I would like to just get outside, take a walk, and then I will get ready to come to the office. We work 4 days a week in the office, and I will always try to get here pretty early so that I can, clear out a lot of emails as well as say, Slack messages, from the day before, and just really try to center myself on the tasks that I have to accomplish that day. And I have to say the tasks are varied, okay, in terms of altitude. I'm a partner at Pentagram. I run a team of, really talented creatives here. So I would spend a lot of time reviewing their work, sitting next to them, checking on, how they're doing with particular assignments. So that takes up a lot of time. But also there are other more, admin related activities and meetings, such as looking at, proposals, looking at our billing, right, which has nothing to do with the creative side of things. But then there's also really heavy duty meetings such as client presentations. So, the altitude changes quite a lot. And there are also different types of client presentations from, a presentation, presenting case studies to a new prospect, right? And that is a place and the moment where you really have to not just impress, but also make them, help them understand that you understand their challenges, right? So that's a different type of preparation, different type of mindset than say presenting concept design, round one. I have to say concept design round one, anything round one presentation is always really, really stressful because you're bringing something entirely new to people and they don't know what you're going to show and you don't know how they're going to react, and I always tell them that there's mutual anxiety in round one presentations. So that is a very different type of things, right? So my day, would be a day that goes through very, very different altitudes. And we try to actually organize it the best we can, meaning that by bundling up low altitude, meetings such as creative review with my team, right? Those are a lot more relaxed, a lot more casual to more high altitude client facing meetings. So we're trying to organize it the best we can, but it doesn't always happen that way. And then, after work, I still go home, right? I take the subway home. It's a pretty fast commute, and I would spend time with my dogs. I have two Shih Tzus. They're very cute, and with my husband at home. Yeah, and try to watch, a good movie. Very simple. Yeah, or read a good book.
Great. Eight is about lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
How do I stay up to date? Well, Um, like I said before, I have this huge curiosity in me. And I'm pretty broad in terms of my interest areas. So I try to actually, read as much as I can. But I have to say nowadays I find myself distracted a lot, to the level that I think is a little bit concerning. Okay. Because there are just so many notifications. I try to mute all my notifications, but you know, um Slack messages, for example, from work also takes up just a lot of attention, from me. But I try to actually spend quality hours, okay. Either, reading news. And I have to say, even reading news nowadays becomes difficult because I find myself getting into this sort of impulsive scrolling mode, okay, quite a bit. And again, that's something that I'm becoming very aware of, and I'm trying to control that, right? I heard from several friends that they just stopped reading on their phone entirely, okay. And I may try that. So I try to read as much as I can. And I definitely have a lot of interest in technology, not in terms of like gadgets, but in terms of bigger movements, in terms of, industry trends, in terms of the big players, in terms of impacts of technology. So I pay a lot of attention to that. And yeah, just try to read as much as I can. Yeah.
Great. So I'm curious about this. So tools, can you talk about your use of digital and or analog tools?
Oh, interesting questions. You can say, everything that has a utility to it can be categorized as a tool. Okay. So for example, we can say that language itself, is a tool. Perhaps is, I think, one of the most amazing technologies that uh, you know, mankind has invented. But tool wise, like I said, we're hyper digitized now. And I'm not sure that it's entirely a positive thing, but that is just how pervasive digital technology is because it's always at your fingertips. It's always you know, uh available, right? 24/7. So, our work has become digitized, okay, a lot. For example, there was a time when people were still needing business cards, okay? That was a very, typical and necessary element in identity design, right? So you would design a card and you would try to figure out the paper, material, finishes, printing qualities, all these things, right? Nobody asks for a business card anymore. So, paper, just the material itself, is really kind of fading out from what we do. Okay. So when the actual, physical materials are fading out, what we end up working with is all digital platforms and, digital concerns. So the work itself has become highly digitized. And the method of creating the work is even more digitized, right? Because we have, softwares, okay, that have always been available, right? It's just that the versioning have changed, the capabilities have changed, right? There's more and more AI platforms that can just pop up and they're really easy to use too. But then, we're also on our phone. So phone also becomes just another sort of it's another computer, right? So for example, we use Slack as the quick text message based communications, and that at first I have to say, like when I first started using Slack, I would say that was maybe like 7 6 7 years ago, maybe 8. That felt like great because the instant nature of communication was right there, right? Somebody would respond to you right away. But nowadays, I think that the just the instant nature, which is also gratifying, I think has become a pretty major distraction for me, and I think for people too, because not only that, your focus time is being, if not reduced, but sliced up by the messages that you're answering, you're responding to, right? And you find yourself, spending a lot of time on responding to these messages, and it's something that I'm trying to figure out, like how we can actually do better, right? It is definitely a really powerful and very convenient, communication tool, but yet at the same time, it's like we're just now learning that it can also bring a lot of, undesirable things, yeah, to how we work, right? Just like everything, social media, when it first came out, it was really, really great to be able to connect with people or now you don't know, to be able to see the world, right? But we just started to learn now, 20 years later, that, social media has a lot of negative impact in these different ways, right? And how do we actually use it better? So I think that, regarding tools, it's always a balance between utility, convenience, but also it's about really spending the time to learn what it can not do for you, right? And ultimately what you're trading off. Yeah.
Great. So we touched on this, but work-life balance or life-work balance, how do you deal with it?
Um, well, like I said, I think about I think about work a lot. And when you're actually thinking about very specific questions or things you want to solve, right? Oh my God, how do I design for this thing? Or, what is that thing really about, right? When you're really thinking very deeply about these things, you're not really working. Yeah, you're basically trying to actually find answers, okay? And that happens a lot in my personal like in my personal life, right? But I try to actually make every moment enjoyable. That is sort of like an operating principle, even when I'm actually thinking about a problem that I'm trying to solve, but I could be actually watching a film, right? But certain things in a film can just like inspire me, and I would go, oh yeah, we should consider that particular cinematic style here, or that particular angle, or it's how like Wes Anderson set up, his props, right? Or the colors, right? So the boundary between work and personal is very blurry for me, and I think I get inspired, my work gets inspired by how I spend my personal time, right? I could be going to a store, for example, to do either window shopping or to do more functional shopping, but so that is personal life, but I always find something interesting that can actually again fuel back to my work. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but that is sort of my like my work life blurriness as opposed to work life balance.
Yeah, no, sounds great. So 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
I think if I weren't doing graphic design, I would probably be in the culinary um business. I find food, I find just the whole culture and also, everything about food and cooking absolutely fascinating. Okay. I actually find culinary arts one of the most underappreciated form of arts in society. There's just so much sort of cultural fibers to it, as well as it's tied to the larger social economic production cycle as well. It's tied to the environment, right? Where does our food come from, right? To science, also to history to anthropology. So if I weren't be doing graphic design, I would probably, be a chef. Yeah. What kind of cuisine? I don't know. I actually find all cuisines from all over the world fascinating because each one has a huge history, and cultural and design aspects to it. But yeah, I think I would be a chef.
And what would you not like to do with your career?
Anything that is, oh, that's a very interesting question. I think anything that is highly repetitive, that is, more administrative based work, I find myself losing my interest very, very quickly when things become predictable and repetitive, So I know that I probably wouldn't be an accountant, for example, right? I think again, it's an incredibly honorable profession, but I probably wouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
And do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Say that again.
A favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Think. The word think is
But-
is probably my favorite word.
And a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Fun, because I find it very broad.
Okay. And you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Passionate.
What keeps you up at night?
My projects.
Hmm. Okay. And 17, what's a dream you're chasing?
I'm sorry.
A dream you're chasing.
A dream I'm chasing. To actually design something that is really that is both appropriate and innovative or inventive for the next project and for all our current projects. I always want to do something that is, at the intersection of these two things, and they seem contradictory, right? Being appropriate, can feel like you're conforming to the norm, right? To convention. But in a business sense, when you're designing communication, that is extremely important. But then designing something innovative, inventive is sort of like the opposite, right? I'm always trying to do that, yeah, for my next project, whatever that may be, can be a very small startup, can be a large global brand, can be a cultural institution, can be for a mom and pop shop, but that's what I'm always trying to do.
Great. And last few here. What inspires you?
Oh, great question. Um, anything that that is first of all artistic in some way, and I know that sounds really vague, but that also has a sense of inventiveness and originality in that. And that can be anything from artifacts, from artwork, which is a very large area, right, of inspirations, from literature, from movies, or even in people. Yeah, I always like something that is artistic but also bold, expressive. Yeah, and I also find myself, inspired by these qualities.
Great. And 19, any advice you'd like to share?
Advice I would share is try to try try stop scrolling when you're really just like, you know, aimlessly scrolling. Yeah, can be doom scrolling nowadays, right? Can be escapist scrolling. Uh, but really think hard about what we're doing when we're scrolling on your phone.
Great.
Then maybe laptop, that is.
Great. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
Uh, Hmm. Can you say that question again?
Sure. How can our listeners keep tabs on you, and what's our call to action?
What's your call to action? How can you keep tab on me? Well, I would say, be honest about my work, right? Be honest about how you feel about it, what you see, right? And the communication channels are really open right now. Feel free to reach out to me, right? Ask questions, share feedback, right? Yeah, all welcome.
Great. Well, such a privilege to have you on today. I'm so happy to record this. Thank you.
Thanks so much.